We are live.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Wright. I am a member of Sunrise Sacramento. Sunrise Sacramento is a hub of Sunrise, which is a national movement of young people fighting to stop climate change and create millions of green jobs in the process. Green jobs. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Wright. I can hear myself, sorry, in the background. We are today hosting a candidate forum for candidates running in the elections in 2022. My apologies, I need to go back to my intro. Again, Sunrise Sacramento is a national movement of young people fighting to stop climate change and create millions of green jobs in the process through a just transition away from fossil fuels. And you can learn more about our hub by visiting sunrisemovement.org. And we hope that you join us. So today we are interviewing Zima Creason. She is running for San Juan Unified School District Board. She is currently an incumbent on that board. Following that, we will be interviewing Jimmy Fremgen, who is running for U.S. Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives specifically, in the new California District 6. So the way that things will go today is we will first interview Zima Creason, and she will give an introduction, and then we'll ask as many questions as we can fit into 25 minutes. Following that, we'll take a short break just to allow folks to get some water, take a bathroom break, whatever's needed. And then we will interview Jimmy Fremgen. He will also have a 5-minute intro, and then we'll ask him questions for 25 minutes. Following that, the candidates will leave the interviews, and we'll also end the live stream so that our hub can consider what we just heard, and we can move on to potentially endorsing these candidates. This is part 2 of our candidate endorsement forum process. We also should have, or we might have some in the future as well. So these are not all the candidates we will be considering for the 2022 elections. So we hope that you tune in for potential additional interviews. So yeah, we're looking forward to interviewing today's candidates, and I'm excited to hear more from them and see what their responses are to these questions that our hub members have put together. So with that, I think we can admit our first candidate, who is Zima Creason, running for San Juan Unified School District Board. Hi, Zima.
Hello there. Let me change my background. That's the work background.
No worries.
All the hats.
How are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. No, I'm good. How are you?
Good. My name is Michelle Wright. I'm a member of Sunrise Sacramento. I'm also joined by other members of our hub, and we will be interviewing you today for San Juan Unified School District Board. I know that the board just moved to, from at-large to by district board, meaning they moved from, you're going to be representing a smaller district, not the district at large. So the way that today will work is I'll give you 5 minutes to introduce yourself. In that time, I'm hoping you could probably tell us a little bit more about San Juan Unified School District, the position that you're holding and that you're planning to run for again, as well as how the at-large to kind of by district change affected you, and how the current redistricting might affect you as well, if you don't mind.
Nope, I don't mind at all.
Okay, great. So you'll have 5 minutes, which is pretty long for that part. Following that, we'll do a 25-minute Q&A. We have some questions prepared from our hub members, and we have a number of them. So as many as you get through would be great. We'd love to hear as much as possible. So In the intro, would you like me to warn you when you have like 30 seconds left, something like that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Let's see. Actually, I'll warn you at a minute because I don't really have a timer up. So
Okay.
I'll give you a minute warning. It's not going to be too strict today on that. So you'll have 5 minutes for your intro and take it away.
Okay, sounds good. So, hi, I'm Zima Creason. I'm the Vice President of the San Juan Unified Board of Education. I'm really honored just to have the opportunity to connect with all of you today, and I would love to earn your support for my reelection campaign. I was originally elected to the seat in 2018. I'm the daughter of a Black woman from Mississippi and an immigrant from India. I'm a really proud mama, and I'm a board member that has a kid currently attending a district school. I'd like to take just a moment to share a really fond memory that I had. I had the honor of meeting the young leaders that famously stood their ground in support of the Green New Deal a few years ago. They were in the news for their really strong advocacy when they engaged Feinstein. I signed the pledge promising not to accept campaign contributions over $200 from Fossil back then. And I brought the little picture. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see it very good. I posted on social today too. But that was a really fun memory. And I'm like, I'm not going to walk away from these kids. And we had a great little chat. But I also renewed my commitment today, signing your pledge. So, I'll talk a little bit about what I can do and what I plan to do to advance our shared goals. First, I won't lend my endorsement or support to anybody that denies climate change or those that block climate justice efforts. I'll continue to raise awareness of climate justice efforts led by experts such as yourself and others at the local level, and work to empower the engagement and advocacy of others, especially our young folks, and raise awareness of what's going on. Because a lot of the issue is folks just don't know and they don't know how to engage. So I'd love to help in that way. I'd also just like to mention there's incredible opportunity in the current state budget. So the governor released his draft budget last week, the January budget, and there's millions of dollars dedicated to climate justice. And so it's so important that folks remain engaged through the budget process so we make sure those dollars truly are allocated in the final budget later this year. So tremendous advocacy opportunity there, and would love to engage young folks, raise awareness, and engage them in those efforts. I'll continue my support and leadership in greening our schools. So solar energy on campuses, less waste, bringing in green buses. Also continue my commitment to, building good jobs, good green jobs, not just any job, but jobs with family supporting wages and benefits. I'll do that with my school board hat on, but also as the executive director of the California EDGE Coalition. EDGE is a statewide policy and advocacy organization focused on addressing the skilled workforce shortage and creating pathways to the middle class with a real eye on economic mobility for Californians that have been left out of our state's prosperity. In the past, we've been very focused on adults, but we have just recently brought in our scope to include opportunity youth. Those are young folks that are not working and not in education. So an incredible pool of talent that deserves all the opportunity in the world and needs those barriers removed. So I want to address the questions you wanted me to cover. In SJUSD land, let me be 100%, it's really hard to be a school board member right now. So number one, it's just keeping kids and staff safe and keep the learning going, and also addressing mental health. For many years, I served as the CEO of Mental Health America of California prior to leading the California EDGE Coalition. I'm really proud to be on their board right now. So just addressing mental health issues, keeping kids and staff safe, keeping the learning going is, first and foremost. You asked about by districting. So we should have been by district a really long time ago. We were at large, as you mentioned. And so we did pass and adopt by district voting. And this was right before redistricting happened. So we're now in the redistricting process. There's two draft maps that are being considered. We started the community outreach meetings, and we will be voting on those maps in February, I believe. They're not super different than the original map. There are some changes, really good changes that a community wanted to see. So I'm happy about that. We were able to do a lot of the work prior to census coming out. So it's not super, the maps aren't earth shaking. So excited about that. And again, it was such a long time coming. It should have happened before now. I am glad, although census isn't everything we hoped it would be, you know, it's in the middle of a pandemic. I wish we were able to get more response that we did. And I know that's a national issue, not just a local issue. But I am glad that we were able to use the newer data because our district has changed so much. It's 75 square miles, so much in the last 10 years that it really would have been a shame to adopt maps that didn't include the community as it stands today. So, you know, in closing, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. Hope I can earn your support. And of course, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Zima. And just to clarify, what areas does your district in the new by district board represent? Which areas is that?
Sure, and I'm happy to share the map too so you could see it. So it's pretty much the Carmichael area and pieces of Arden Arcade.
Great. Okay, so we're going to jump into the questions that our hub members have prepared for you today. And you'll have 25 minutes. If other folks can make sure we're on time, since I might not have my eye on that, I'd appreciate that. We have some other members joining us in the Zoom call. All right, so the first question is, what do you feel has been your greatest win in your last term? And what has been the board's greatest shortcoming?
My district by far is a huge win. It was, again, a long time coming. And so I'm really proud that that happened during my time on the board. The biggest shortcoming, I mean, there's a lot, you know, to be 100% honest, you know, with COVID taking over the world, everything had to shift, you know, so as much as we tried to push forward our original goals and original priorities, which have always still been, you know, front and center, safety had to come first. And I'm not sorry about that. But I am sorry that I wasn't able to do more to directly engage community in our efforts to really address the opportunity gap. Some say achievement gaps. I don't like using that language because I think that puts the onus on the kids, and I don't think it's on the kids. I think it's a systematic issue. So I wish that there was more. I mean, I recognize as a single board member, I'm one vote. I can't change the whole world, and this is a nationwide problem. But what I can do is engage community. So community is leading these efforts, and that we're really getting that voice of lived experience that guides the system. You know, the systems change, and it's not just the usual suspects saying, look at this pretty shiny thing, we're going to do this, without community leading the way.
Thank you. And our next question is, what measures could you make San Juan Unified School District, what measures could make San Juan Unified School District infrastructure more energy efficient? And how might someone go about decarbonizing school energy use?
So I think a few things can happen. We have been really lucky that voters have supported a lot of bond measures and money. We're a really old district. We have schools that are very, very old. And so we've been doing a lot of upgrading to those schools. A couple of schools have been completely rebuilt, including Dyer Kelly, Arden Middle School, and some major renovations in others. So a couple of things. It's ensuring as we're doing these upgrades that we are including energy efficiency. And another big thing that I've put a lot of energy in is my appointments. So, you know, as a board member, we get to make all these appointments to district committees. So making sure that we have leaders with the expertise in climate and climate change and saving our world are in these leadership positions, guiding the committee's work that then comes to the board. You know, the committees really are advisory committees to the board. And so we have those experts that are guiding that work before it comes to us is imperative. So I've been working really hard to strategically get folks. I've appointed two folks that are in the labor movement into these committees, and I plan to do more of that. Would love to have one of your experts or another energy expert on the team, especially in the facilities committee, to bring that expert lens to the table.
Okay, great. And then our next question is, it ties into what you just mentioned. What is your relationship with organized labor in your school district?
I am very proud of my relationship with organized labor in my school district and beyond. I'm a labor head. I have actually never been a part of a union. My husband, though, works for SMUD and has been part of a union for 20 years. My mama was a school bus driver for many years and a union member. I proudly was early endorsed by Sacramento Central Labor. I was really excited about that. I have a very, very close working relationship with sheet metal workers who actually one of their members is the chair of our bond oversight committee. We have another member that serves on our facilities committee. So my relationship with labor is great, and I want to continue that relationship. As for in the district, I was proud to be endorsed by CSEA in my original campaign. They're still going through their process, so I haven't interviewed with them, so I can't speak to this year. SJTA, I was not endorsed by last year, but we have a wonderful, wonderful work, or last election is what I should say. We have a great working relationship. And so, and actually I speak, even though I didn't get that endorsement, it really speaks to that shouldn't be the end of the relationship, right? We all have work to do, and we have a great relationship. I respect labor. You know, I've said on the dais on record many, many times, especially during the pandemic, of course, kids come first, we're education, but this is a workplace too. This is a huge workplace, and we have to honor our contracts, and we have to work with our partners to ensure that our workers are well too.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is, during wildfires, schools, like all buildings, often face poor indoor air quality from particulate matter and smoke. How can SJUSD schools improve filtration, or what other measures can schools take to ensure better air quality for students and staff?
Well, it's going to be an ongoing issue now, which is just so sad. So we've done a couple things. I hope I get this right. I think it's the purple meters. We recognize just looking at the index that, you know, you Google and it'll tell you how the air quality wasn't really reflecting the actual air quality at individual school sites. And it differed. You know, you could have pockets of really nasty air when you go, you know, to the other side of our district, which is 75 square miles, where it's not so bad. And so we did install a bunch, I think it's called purple meters. I'm sorry if I got that language wrong, so that we really can identify by that location what the air is like. We have implemented policies where, you know, kids can't go outside, sadly. Filtration has been on the forefront before the pandemic because of that. We recognize this is going to be an ongoing issue, and we can't close campus every time there's an issue. So what are we going to do to keep the learning going, but also keep the kids safe? So what I am absolutely committed to do is ensuring that as we're improving the schools, all of our campuses and building new school sites, that we are implementing that technology for the filtration systems, and also raising awareness within our school community of what that means. I mean, people know, okay, the air is bad today, but what can you do as an individual? Like, why should you care about that? What can that do to your health? Just to raise awareness in that way. And I think that can help, number one, help an individual's health, but also engage young folks and others into climate justice. If we raise awareness of the issue and why it's happening and what can we do to engage so that we have a better climate for all, I think will move the needle long term as our young folks become, our young folks are leaders, but as they get older and enter into the workforce, that they can lead in these jobs that really prioritize cleaning up our environment.
Great, thank you. Next question. In this cycle, we see some first-time candidates for council, assembly, Congress, etc. What do you think is the importance of candidates at the school board level, and how much of a difference can they make compared to these other offices? And are you interested in running for a higher office someday? And if so, who would you maybe like to take over your seat on school board?
I'm going to try, I might miss some of that question, so I'm going to answer it to the best I can. If I miss something, if you could remind me, I'd appreciate it. And, that's a loaded question. All right. So a lot of people I know and love are running for first-time candidates and have in the last 4 years. Caity Valenzuela and I, that's my girl. And she's such a leader and, of course, an expert in this space. So as for school board, we, as you know, and we've talked about, we went by district. We didn't only go by district, we also added 2 new seats. So we're going to have seats come up in this next election cycle that don't have any incumbents. So it's so imperative that we get folks that are running for those seats that have shared values. And I am absolutely ready to support folks and meet with folks so that we can get the right people in those seats 100%. And I don't mean this as an over criticism, right? I do believe many elected officials are doing the best they can with the hands that they're dealt. I believe that. However, if we want change, we can't do more of the same. And so I'm really excited that there's new blood and new folks that are getting into the game to provide their expertise. And what I'm seeing, because again, I have some buddies that are in that, Caity Maple and others, that they have the lived experience and the heart for the job. It's more than just politics, right? It's putting humans first. And so I'm really excited that there's more folks like that are jumping into this and into the leadership roles. As for who to take my seat, I really have no idea. I haven't thought about that at all. I'm really just focused on continuing to serve my community now. When I first ran for office, my thought was, where can I be most helpful? And this continues to be where I believe I can be most helpful. Now, I would say the qualities of the type of person I would love to see another parent or somebody that's really involved in raising a kid. And that could be aunties, uncles, it could be siblings, somebody that's really close, either a parent or really close or engaged in raising children in that seat, because, the people closest to the pain and should be there. Really want people of color to be in that seat. Would like to see younger folks in that seat. A new student, a newly graduated student would be awesome. A climate justice expert would be awesome. But as for a specific person, I haven't thought too much about that. Higher office, that is such a loaded question. So in a full transparency, I 100% thought that I would run for higher office. Specifically, I wanted to run for assembly when Ken Cooley termed out. I'm rethinking it. I don't know. Right now, my goal is school board. This is where I know I can make the most change. This is where I'm needed. I'm doing the good work. So I'm not closed off to the idea of higher office, but it's definitely not the goal that I thought it was 4 years ago. Like, I really thought that was going to be where I ended up. And now it's like, maybe not. Right now, I just need to be here working for these kids, and that's my priority. So we'll see.
Thank you for answering that. Let's see. So we might have time for 2 more questions, maybe just one. I'm getting some different. Okay, so our end time is 3:35. So we'll probably have a couple questions for you remaining. The next one is, as many are upset about what they call critical race theory, we're wondering, what is the status of educating students on our country's history around race? And do you think any new curriculum or courses should be added?
Yeah, all the courses. And it shouldn't just be a course. It should be embedded into everything we're doing. It shouldn't be a side conference. Sorry, I get really passionate about this one. Take a breath. So CRT, I might get a little emotional about that one. I honestly didn't even know what that meant when really mean people start making phone calls and sending really nasty emails about CRT that were just straight up racist. And it was just hard. I was like, what are you even talking? I don't even know what CRT is. And you're calling me all these names. I don't know what you're talking about. I had to Google it. And I read about it. I was like, so you're just talking about history? It's like, yeah, we teach history. So what do I think about it? I think that we need to tell the truth. I mean, period. I mean, I don't understand why that's hard for folks. The real truth, whether that be scary or not appetizing, whether it's ugly or beautiful. I mean, we need to tell the truth of our history. And the fact is that has not been done for years and years and years systematically. And it's just 100% unacceptable. So I'm excited that there's been such a statewide effort to implement, it's not CRT, I'm sorry, I'm jumbling up my words now, but ethnic studies. I'm so glad that there has been leadership, because as a single school board member, or even as a school district, we're not able to just implement our own curriculum, the state really, there's standards of what we have to teach. And then there's some flexibility on how you teach those. You get these course offerings and you can choose from these pools of offerings, which you want to implement at your school sites or district, I should say, not school sites. And then teachers have some flexibility of how they craft their art to achieve said goal by the state. All that said, and yes, I do believe that there should be course offerings that really are specific to ethnic studies and celebration of just diversity. But I also believe it's so important to embed it in everything that's already there, which isn't hard to do. You really can embed it in what exists. And I think that is maybe could be a faster win. Now, that said, curriculum adoption, that's not something that happens every year, but it does happen. So if we get it lined up and ensure that there's curriculum offerings that include celebration and history and inclusion of people of color and just diversity as a whole. And of course, you asked me about CRT specifically, and of course, that's, we're talking about ethnic and cultural diversity, but also in gender diversity and, folks with disabilities. There's a lot, there's so much, and we should be blending it in everything we do. That was a really long answer. I'm sorry. Get emotional about that one.
Appreciate it. Let's see. The next question is, so how do you think schools should address the Omicron surge to protect kids and school staff?
Yeah, so I have been consistent with my position. We have to follow standards. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist, and I don't want to pretend to be one. Me pretending that I know better than health officials could kill people, period. I have been asked in my position, will you reject the mandates, reject, masking and vaxxing and all these things? And I'm like, no, I will never do that. I have to trust that the people that are making these mandates do have our public interest at heart. And we, as a school district, have to implement those health standards and those guidance. Now, health standards and I've been actually very proud of our district. I feel that we've done a really good job of implementing directives as they have moved forward. It's tricky though, because they change so often, and so, really often they could change week to week, understandably so, but it takes a second to be able to adapt and implement and move it forward, educate everybody at school sites that have to actually make it happen. So I think my answer is just to continue to do that, making sure that we are following the guidance that's coming from CDP and local Dr. Kasiri and her team. It's so important. And I would say too, pushing back on this narrative that these health standards are nothing more than a political statement, which isn't true. Masks have become a political statement, which just boggles my mind. I'll also share, and actually there's some groups that really kind of were pretty nasty to me for doing it. I was sure to, when I got vaxxed, my whole family's vaccine boosted. When I originally got the vaccine, I made a commitment. As soon as I was eligible to get this vaccine, I'm going to get it. And I'm going to post it all over social media to just be a leader in that space. I'm doing it. You should do it too, especially as a woman of color, especially from the Black community. There's understandably some mistrust when it comes to government healthcare issues, So I wanted to stand up as a leader and just show folks I'm doing it. Please do it as well. And I'll continue to do that. There were some groups that, try to say that I abused power by getting the vaccine, and I didn't. I checked it 15 times. I got the email that I could, I did, So I'll continue to be a leader in that way, to just promote the health benefits. And also I'd like to share, and always with my son's permission, because, it's his life. And so I don't try to tell all his business without his permission. But him too, he is such a good hand washer. He's 15. I'm talking about, or he's about to be 15. I'm talking about him like he's 10, but he's, really good. He takes it very seriously, is my point. He is big on his masking. He always has a sanitizer. I like to uplift that too. So it's not just me, but it's also, what are we doing in our home and what's going on with my own son? Please do this with your kids too. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, thank you. Or for me, it did. So good timing. We just ended at the point that we should have. So So really appreciate you being here and taking the time to answer our questions. We will consider what we heard today and get back to you. And so again, we are so thankful that you came to be interviewed by us, and we'll be in touch.
Well, I very much appreciate the opportunity, and regardless of what happens with the endorsement, I'm just really thankful that you exist and what you're doing, and I would love to partner in any way that I can to advance your mission. It's wonderful, and connect other young folks into what you're doing. So just thank you.
Thank you, Zima. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
All right, so at this point, we are going to take a 5-minute break. We'll be back around 3:40. And after that, we will admit Jimmy Fremgen to the interview, and we will interview him. So we'll see you in 5. Hello, and welcome back to the Sunrise Sacramento 2022 Elections Candidate Forum, Part 2. My name is Michelle Wright. I am a member of our Sunrise Sacramento Hub, and I am joined by fellow members as well as Jimmy Fremgen, who is running for U.S. Congress in the California District 6. So that would be for the House of Representatives. And Jimmy, I believe you are here.
Yes, sorry, I had to be sure I had all the right pieces in place.
No problem. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. How are you?
I'm great. It's really exciting to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so just to give you a rundown of the process today, you will first dive into a 5-minute introduction, opening statement, and after that, we'll do a 25-minute Q&A that I will be leading. And let's see, Am I forgetting anything? Sorry, I don't believe so. Actually, if you could just in your intro, kind of let folks know what the district is that you're going to be representing. I know we just went through redistricting, so things kind of changed a bit. So yeah, I'll give you 5 minutes now to do your intro, and I'll try to give you a bit of a warning. Probably I'll give you a 1 minute warning around 3:45. So go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you, Michelle, and thank you everybody for having me here. I am Jimmy Fremgen. I'm running for Congress here in Sacramento. I'm actually running in the newly created 7th district of Sacramento. So it's the old 6th district. We, of course, know that we split Sacramento into a couple different pieces. And I know that we've all been on a lot of Zoom calls. I also teach high school, and I've been on computers all the time, all week. So I know that you don't need anybody talking at you for very long. I want to get past the me talking part and get to the you talking part so I can answer any questions that you might have. But I want to tell you a little bit about myself first. So the first thing I'll tell you is the first thing that I told my old boss, Congressman Cummings, when I interviewed with him, almost 7 years ago, which is that I'm a teacher. Once a teacher, always a teacher. But I'm a teacher in the modern economy. I'm a teacher that has to work 2 jobs to make ends meet. I work as a bartender in Midtown as well. I'm a member of the queer community. I'm a millennial. I'm a member of the generation that grew up with school shootings, that grew up on the business end and will continue to live on the business end of climate change for the rest of my life. I'm a member of the generation that watched elected officials gut our elections and gut our democracy for their own gain and decide that they were more interested in getting reelected and raising money than they were in protecting the vote. And I'm running for Congress here in Sacramento because I believe that we're running out of time. It's something that I know personally. I grew up with a heart condition. I still have a heart condition. And when I was 13, I sat across from a doctor who told me that if I wanted to be able to see graduation day, I would need to have a pacemaker defibrillator implanted in my chest right away. And I was ready. I mean, that's, as a 13-year-old, that's something that you're not prepared to hear. And so I said, okay, like I'll cancel my spring break plans. I'll change everything I need to do. Like, let's do this. Let's scrub in. Let's go. And he said, no, we got to work with your insurance to make sure that somebody will pay for it first. And so I know what it feels like to spend 3 months sitting around waiting for our broken healthcare system to catch up so that I could potentially live long enough to graduate high school. Later, I learned a lot about time and making the most out of the life that you have when my mom passed away from the same disease that I have when I was 19 and she was 45. In terms of my experience in our economy and in our community, I know what it feels like to lose everything during the pandemic. And the same day, a couple of years ago, I lost my job and my business overnight. I went from feeling like I was building a life for myself and building financial stability to having to be on unemployment. Professionally, when I worked in Congress, I know what it feels like to run out of time because after the tragedy at Newtown, I was the staffer that was in charge of the first bipartisan anti-gun trafficking bill in Congress. And we took it to the Senate, and I watched as Senator Joe Manchin and several other members of the United States Senate failed to support the bill, and it died. And they decided that it was more important for their own political cause and their own reelection than it was to prevent school children from being murdered in their classrooms. We are learning, and we've continued to learn, that recycling the same policies and the same politicians over and over, it just doesn't work. It's not going to address homelessness. It's not going to address access to healthcare. It's not going to address the climate crisis. And I'm running because I think that persistence makes change. When I went to Capitol Hill, when I left my classroom, my first job was working for Doris Matsui. And I got offered a job in that office because I went to every single House office with my resume and I said, I want to work here. And they were the ones that said, okay. And then later when I went and worked for Congressman Cummings, I showed up and I brought my resume and I said, I know that I emailed this, but I know that things disappear in email boxes and I want to bring this to you. And I showed up and he looked at me and he said, I want you on my team, not because you're qualified, because I personally don't think that you are, but because I know that your heart is in this fight. And I worked for him for 3.5 years. And over the course of that 3.5 years, I got to sit in rooms with people like John Lewis, people like President Barack Obama, people like Maxine Waters, Senator Warren, Senator Sanders. And I got to see what it looked like when somebody believed in the people that they served more than they believe in their donors. And so I'm running because I think that we have one life to live. Congressman Cummings said that we have one life to live and we don't get a dress rehearsal. I got shocked by my pacemaker when I was 21 years old. I was going up a flight of stairs, my heart started racing, and I got pummeled in the chest. And the only reason that I lived through that day was because I lived in a part of the country and with access to healthcare. And the only reason that I was able to survive was because I grew up in a family that had quality health insurance. And if not for that, the disease that I have is the same disease that kills the most high school athletes in the country, especially students from low-income communities and communities of lower access to healthcare that don't have the access to preventative screening and things like that that they need to be able to survive. So we don't have time to waste. And we hear a lot, and I know that we're all young people on this call, and a lot of us get told a lot of the time that we shouldn't waste our time, that we should wait our turn, that we shouldn't be pushing so hard. And I could not believe less in that attitude. My first job was scooping ice cream at Baskin Robbins. And to this day, if somebody scoops me a crummy scoop of ice cream, I can tell that they're phoning it in, that they're not putting in their work. And when I went to Congress and when I worked there for 5 years, I saw people that did a good job and that worked really hard on behalf of the people that they worked for. And I saw people that didn't. And during the pandemic, it became very clear that the people that weren't doing it were impacting marginalized communities, that they were failing to hold corporations accountable, that they were not delivering for the people that were on the front lines of this pandemic, people that were living paycheck to paycheck, families that were looking for healthcare, families that were looking for childcare when their daycare was shut down, and they were trying to figure out how to work from home with their little ones running around. We're seeing our elected officials drop the ball time and time again by refusing to hold corporations accountable. And we need freedom from that. We live in this country that loves to talk about freedom, but we need freedom from corporations. We need freedom from corrupt politicians. We need freedom from apathy. I'm almost done. And I'm coming to you. This is my first endorsement call. I'm coming to you because I think that this is the foundation on which we start. All of the policies that I talked about, homelessness, healthcare, gun violence, none of it matters if we don't immediately address the climate crisis. And so I'm committed to being accessible, to cultivating future leaders. As a member of Congress for this community, I'm going to spend 20 minutes every single day in a high school classroom answering questions so that people know who I am and they know how to access our government, because it's not enough to only serve parts of our community. We need to be serving everybody. And so that's why I'm excited to answer all these questions and to hear from you guys.
we gave you quite a lot of time, a little bit over what we were supposed to. So I appreciate you giving that passionate introduction. So the Q&A is going to go till 5 after 4. Hub members have compiled a number of questions, and so we'll get through as many as we get through, depending on your responses, of course. All right, so let's just jump in. The first question is, do you plan to win? And if so, what is your plan to win?
I do plan to win. Absolutely. I think I made really clear in my introduction that I don't like wasting my time, and that I feel like I have a really finite amount of time to live and to serve. My plan for winning is this. I am somebody that believes in organization and believes in mobilization. I'm somebody that believes that we have this whole set of people that think that they can buy and sell our elections, and we have something that they don't. We have votes. And in our community, we have the possibility to mobilize. So I've already been working with local business owners to get the word out and getting ready to put posters up. I've been talking to volunteers to mobilize, to gather signatures. I've been talking to community members and going and being invested in our community, because I think we live in a city that is the capital of this state, but we don't have active politicians here. We don't have people that are actually invested and are engaged and accessible. And I believe that by not waiting till I get elected to serve, by starting to deliver services now, by doing things like hosting college, how to pay for college seminars, for helping people understand how to get out of homelessness, that we can demonstrate and lead by example what this is going to look like when I'm elected and what our community can expect, and the stark contrast that we have with the people that represent us right now. And so that starts by being engaged with different communities and pulling them together and being a convening force and making sure that everybody feels like they're stakeholders and that they're engaged.
Okay, great. And so do you have a win number is the follow-up?
I do. Are we talking about the primary or are we talking about the general?
I can't tell you. So why don't you choose? I'm just reading.
Yeah, no problem. They're just very drastically different numbers. So this is a midterm election. Midterm elections, the turnout is traditionally a little bit lower. Things are a little bit different now because of redistricting. We know that in order to get in the top 2 of the primary, of course, everybody runs in the same primary. It's not a party specific primary anymore. To get in the top 2 and be competitive in the general, you need approximately 35,000 votes. We're shooting for above 40,000 so that we can get in there and be locked in. To win in the general, it looks like it's going to take about 115,000 votes. Those are very attainable numbers. 115,000 votes is about 1 in 8 voters. These are things that we can do. And if we stand together as a community, like I said before, we can flex that really effectively.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, how will your campaign build power even if you don't win?
Can you elaborate on what you mean by power?
I cannot. Again, I'm just
Okay.
reading questions
Fair
that
enough.
were given to me. My apologies.
That's okay. Building power, I think, in this circumstance is demonstrating to the community that you don't have to be a passenger in your representation. When I started on Capitol Hill, I worked for Congresswoman Matsui, and my mind was, I worked on her front door. I actually worked as an unpaid staff assistant for quite a while. I was an intern, our staff assistant left, and then I had to fill in a lot of those gaps while they were hiring. And I was blown away by the kind of power that came in the doors. Corporate leaders, Wall Street bankers, senior members of the military. And then I went and I worked for Congressman Cummings. And I saw a contrast. I saw parents, I saw teachers, I saw school board members, I saw people that were living on the front lines of the policies of the federal government and that felt empowered because of who he had become and who he had shown himself to be in his community, to come to his office and to bring their concerns to him. And so I think we need to change the dynamic of how we expect to interact with our elected leaders. And that's one of the things that I was talking about in my intro is we can start serving now. We can start providing services now, and we can demonstrate that this community, and I think we saw this a lot during the pandemic, we can demonstrate that our community is willing to stand together and is willing to serve one another, whether it's serving our unhoused neighbors, whether it's helping people with food insecurity, whether it's helping people make sure that they stay in their homes. The information is out there. We have a tremendous number of experts and leaders in this community. And if we can get those individuals together, we can build a movement that is going to be successful regardless of whether or not I win. And if I don't win, I'm going to continue working with that movement and continue supporting that movement because I think that's a model that works. And I think it's a model that matters. We shouldn't just be passengers getting dragged wherever our elected leaders want to be, or more often, where our elected leaders' donors want them to be. We get to help drive the train. We get to evaluate them and decide whether or not they get to keep those jobs. And it's our voices when we stand together that are going to matter. And I think that starts now.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, despite majorities in the Senate and the House, Democrats haven't gotten key parts of their platform passed. How would you approach passing legislation like the Build Back Better Act or voting rights?
Well, I think the first fundamental thing that we have to do is we have to end the filibuster right away. The filibuster is not, so I'm a little bit of a nerd on parliamentary procedure. It was my job, part of my job when I worked there. And the filibuster is not in the Constitution. It's not in the expectations for how we run our government. It is a tradition that was adopted and that was mostly grounded in blocking civil rights procedure. And it has been utilized over and over and over by people in the minority to oppose common sense consensus ideas. So that's step one. As a member of the House of Representatives, you have access to the floor of the United States Senate. And so one thing that I would do is if the Senate was voting on a piece of legislation like that, or was going to take a position on a piece like that, I would walk the 200 yards down the hallway and stand at the back of that chamber. And I would make sure that every single person in there knew that I was there and that my constituents wanted to see it passed. There are things that we can do. And you talk about passing legislation, and, you know, people talk about Congress and they say, well, we don't pass bills anymore. It doesn't really make any sense. It's not worth it. Congress doesn't matter. When I worked on House Oversight, I saw Congressman Cummings used a whole toolkit and empowered us to use a whole toolkit of things to make change that weren't even legislative. I passed bills, I should say he passed bills as a member of the congressional staff. You don't get to pass anything. You're just a ghostwriter for other people. But I helped pass bills when I worked there that were based on investigations that we did. We launched an investigation that found that 115 colleges and universities use illegal federal financial aid procedure to block access to highly selective schools for low income and students of color. And we published that investigation at the same time that we sent a letter to the Secretary of Education. We sent that letter to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and every college newspaper that had one of those schools. And within a month, we saw every single one of those schools change their practices for federal student aid. And we didn't even have to take a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives to change outcomes for hundreds of thousands of incoming students that year. So the problem that I have, and this gets back to what I was saying about seeing somebody do a bad job and being able to recognize it. The problem that I have is that people are so focused, our current leaders are so focused on the very narrow set of things that they talk about in the newspaper, that they're neglecting the rest of the skill set that they can use. They're neglecting the rest of the tools that they can use. And you can do things right now. Well, I shouldn't say I can do things right now, but I can do things on day one as one of the most junior members of Congress that our elected officials have refused to do over the last 15, 20 years.
Excellent, thank you. Our next question is, how have you previously contributed to solving community challenges?
So during the pandemic, when I got laid off, I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I joined two nonprofit boards and I helped create some programs. So I tried to volunteer as much as I could. And before I even decided to run, I was going to the food bank and helping people get food. I was going to YXP Unite in Oak Park and handing out essential goods and services and talking to immigrant families and low-income families that were cramming into one car because that was all they had for the neighborhood, and helping them get their stuff. But on the boards that I joined and helped create, one of them is the United Core Alliance. We are a nonprofit that assists victims of the war on drugs, especially people of color. We have created a program where we expunge or assist in the expungement of cannabis-related crimes that prevent people of color, especially, from access to housing and quality jobs. We work with cannabis companies to help employ a lot of those individuals once they get their offenses expunged, and making sure that we're pairing people with jobs where they can not only just have a job, but have a career, so that we don't have this constant cycle of entry-level jobs that keeps people at low economic status, so that there's an opportunity to climb that ladder. And in that same vein, I worked with a group called All My Friends Get Fed, which supports hospitality folks. So I talk about being a member of the hospitality community. I'm a bartender in Midtown, and overnight in Sacramento, we lost 18,000 jobs. There's 18,000 people that didn't know where they were going to live, that didn't know how they're going to pay for healthcare, that didn't know how they're going to pay for rent. And those people needed support. And a lot of them, once bars and restaurants started to reopen, started working double shifts, started taking hours that were beyond their physical capability just because they were so concerned about their economic stability. And so we would bring them food. We would bring them meals so that they could eat while they were eating or while they were working. And then we created a secondary program that we partner with community organizations that work directly with people experiencing homelessness and people coming out of homelessness. An example of that is St. John's Program for Real Change over in Rancho Cordova. And to take people that have hospitality experience, that might have worked in a restaurant, that might have worked in a bar, that might have worked in a hotel, and put them into career level jobs. So our first graduate of that program was placed earlier this year, and she went to work at the Kimpton Sawyer Hotel in their hospitality program, and she's already a manager there. And so all of this gets to the point of, if you think creatively, and if you take people in your community that are already doing really good work and you put them together, you have the opportunity to make change. And it's something that I'm really excited about, because those were things that I was able to do as a private citizen. With the heft of the federal government behind me, and with the heft of this title behind me, and the budget that comes with it, we can turn around and we can drive results directly into this community. We don't need anybody's permission. We don't need to pass legislation. Those are things that you can do just as a member of Congress by yourself.
Great, thank you. Our next question is regarding Rep. Matsui. So she is currently co-chair of the House Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, and has branded herself as a House leader in clean energy legislation. Do you think she lives up to her brand? Please explain your perspective and what you would do differently.
So I don't think we get a lot by tearing other people down. I think it tends to be a little bit of a distraction. What I will say is this: I worked for Congresswoman Matsui. I worked for her for 6 months. And over that period of time, I started as an unpaid intern. And like I said, I became a staff assistant. And I realized at one point that I was doing a job that gets paid in other offices. And I looked into the law and I figured out how that was possible. And I realized that Congress has exempted themselves from labor laws, and that they had exempted themselves from a portion of federal labor law that said that interns are not allowed to supplant regular paid jobs. But because Congress didn't have to follow that, I was doing a lot of the roles that somebody would have to do in a paid position. And so I think it's really important to not just look at what somebody says. Press releases are cheap. Caucuses are easy. They're created at the sign of a pen. But they don't necessarily hold any sort of authority. I think if you look at the Congresswoman and you look at where her interests lie, she has interests in coal-fired plants in Bulgaria and in India. She has more than $1 billion at her disposal. And you have to ask yourself whether the talk lines up with the walk, and if that's the kind of person and that's the kind of mentality that you want representing you. For me, I have taken a pledge not to take any money from companies that contribute to fossil fuel, or from any companies that burn fossil fuels or continue to contribute to climate change. I've taken a pledge to not take any money from corporate political action committees. Congresswoman Matsui takes more than 70% of her money from corporate political action committees. And a lot of those companies are companies that are directly contributing to climate change. And so it's less about what's on paper and how they've been branded, and it's much more about the results. And Congresswoman Matsui has been in office for quite some time, and she has a long record, and you can go through and you can see the bills that she has introduced. You can go to congress.gov and you can put in her name and search her authorship. You can see the bills that she has fought to push out of committee and has fought to pass into legislation or pass into law. And you can see that with the exception of 1 or 2 items, every single piece of legislation that she has passed during her term has been related to the activity of the Smithsonian and has been related to her role as a board member at the Smithsonian Institution. And so you have to ask yourself, if somebody is working harder for the United States Smithsonian Institution than they are for the people that live here in Sacramento, where are their priorities really?
Thank you so much, Jimmy. So quickly, what committees would you have your eye on? And I'm sorry, there's something covering the text. And do you think you would be assigned to them as a freshman?
So the obvious choice for me is to go onto House Oversight and Government Reform. I worked there as a staffer and as an investigator for 3.5 years. And I saw members of Congress that got handed question lines that we had slaved over for hours and hours and hours that were going to work for and build accountability for regular working people. and then have them throw them away and instead ask questions that they had been handed by lobbyists for the same corporations that they were supposed to be holding accountable. I think that there's a lot of room in those committees for somebody to be holding them accountable. That's where Caity Porter is. That's where AOC is. That's where Congressman Cummings was. And I think it's an obvious choice for me in terms of leadership. If you want somebody that is new to be successful, you want to put them in places where they are going to be the most successful and where they are going to be a team player and where they are going to collaborate and be effective. And I think that I'm an obvious candidate for that committee. The other committee that I worked on, and I think I'm an obvious candidate for, is the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And one of the big reasons that I believe that I would be effective on that committee is because that is the nexus of transportation in this country. This district includes multiple airports, it includes multiple train stations, it includes waterways. And we know that one of the primary drivers of climate change in this country and on the planet is how we are burning fossil fuels for transportation. While on that committee, I would be right smack in the middle of the people that are making those decisions and the votes that are funding the projects that are going to affect the role that climate change plays in our future. And you said quickly, so I won't go on to my second point about that, but that's my answer.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. And we really appreciated your time today. And I apologize for getting the district number wrong. So it's
okay.
It's
been a very confusing
after redistricting. It's the California Congressional District 7, right?
That's right.
And then just, can you describe maybe you did already, but for folks watching, can you describe what that encompasses, that district?
Of course. So if you think about Sacramento, you take the river across the top of downtown and midtown, take the American River, go over around West Sacramento, follow the county line all the way down towards Antioch. There's a little sliver that goes down there. It comes back up. It encompasses Galt, Elk Grove, South Sacramento, and kind of goes up to the edge of Rancho Cordova, the bottom of La Riviera, wraps around Sacramento State, hits the river, and then comes back around across Midtown and downtown.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Jimmy. We will consider your responses today and we'll definitely be in touch. So if you don't mind logging off, we'll have a chat. I'll have a chat with some of my fellow hub members and yeah, we'll get back to you. Thanks
Sounds
so much
good.
for being
here.
here.
It's been wonderful to be with you guys all today. And I hope to have an opportunity to not see you through a computer screen. I think we've all had plenty of Zoom meetings.
I hope so too. Let's hope that the campaigns this year aren't completely virtual again, or
Amen.
canvassing and that sort of thing. All right.
All right. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the extra day off this weekend. Take care.
Thanks, you too. Bye. All right. Thanks everyone for joining today. For those watching on the live stream, we hope that you heard some important information that might help you in determining whom to vote for in the upcoming primaries and general elections this year. So stay tuned to hear more about potential additional forums that we'll be having for other candidates as we hear more about who's running this year. Folks are just starting to file and announce. So yeah, so stay tuned. We hope to bring you more of these, and we'll definitely bring you more information about who we endorse. We would encourage you, if you're interested in joining our hub. Again, we are a youth-led, climate-focused organization looking to transition to green economy with green jobs and more climate justice. So appreciate you watching today, and for the folks from our hub, appreciate you being here. Thank you.